Alors, collègues, on va passer à la prochaine item à l'ordre du jour, c'est-à-dire c'est Madame Hazel Gashoka. C'est votre sujet, c'est-à-dire Order and Decorum in Senate Proceedings.
Would you care to speak to this?
Yes. So I feel as though there is like a two-tier policy for members of Senate employed by the universities and student senators. I'll take, for example, my colleague, Senator Hickey. So I find usually that in previous Senate meetings, so when I was first elected as a member of the Senate by the undergraduates in the Faculty of Social Sciences, the first meeting I attended, I noticed that when Senator Hickey would speak, people would talk and laugh, and it's just completely disrespectful. I feel as though folks just have a lack of respect, and I feel as though it's also created a very toxic environment, one in which I don't feel comfortable working in. Most meetings, at times I've heard people make comments when Senator Hickey is speaking, saying, Jesus Christ, what the hell, comments that I wouldn't even choose to repeat, but if you'd like, I can point out which senators did make those comments. And it's just the disrespect. Moreover, when I tried to discuss issues of decorum, it was often brushed by and glossed over. And so that I'm also taking issue. It's giving the appearance as though my concerns are not important. And as a member of the Senate, I should have all rights as all members of the Senate. And so I think this discriminatory paternalistic practice needs to end.
Thank you. Yes?
I just have something I think I could add, especially like if someone is speaking, I think at the Senate, and you like for whatever reason maybe find what they have to say as being like disrespectful or rude or anything like that, I think potentially a better response than acting disrespectful and rude in response would be to vocalize your I guess disagreement with what that senator is saying. So it might be more constructive too, instead of sort of showing your dismay and showing your frustration. I think it might be more respectful and just more constructive in general to instead just like talk about it and say like, maybe like I would appreciate it if you vocalize or if you said it in this way or like what you said here made me feel this way, rather than necessarily being rude or disrespectful in response. I guess that's what I have to say.
Moreover, I just wanted to also add to that I also see hypocrisy at the level of Senate. So, for example, in the case of when the camera was shut off by the chairperson, Mr. Gould, at the time, he found Senator Hickey out of order. However, there are several times where members of Senate make rude, discriminatory comments towards members of Senate, and yet the chairperson says nothing. Is it not the duty of the chairperson to maintain order in the Senate? And if that is the case, why is it that there's this two-tier system where faculty members employed by the university are allowed to make rude and awful comments toward Mr. Hickey, whereas other members of the Senate, or rather when Mr. Hickey's making a point and is found out of order, then the chairperson calls him out on that. Like it doesn't make sense to me at all. So I think if you're going to apply the same rules to Mr. Hickey, the same rules should also be applied to all faculty members who are members of the Senate.
Other comments or interventions? Autres contributions à la discussion?
Mr. Chair, will you now call for an apology from the member of Senate, Vice Dean of Arts, Mr. Bachand, who intimidated me and defamed me before the Senate, angrily saying, "Are you sick in the head?"
I said I was going to defer that till we come to item 13B, which we're not at. We're on 10 right now. So I'm going to deal with that when we come to that part of the agenda.
We've just talked about two-tier treatment of students, disrespect. Been some pretty serious concerns raised. I don't understand why you're, again, pushing this to a further
Well, I'm just being consistent. I earlier said we deal with that when we came to 13B in the agenda, and that's what I propose to do. Are there other points of discussion on the point made by?
Yes, actually, I'd like to have that issue moved up as opposed to being dealt with at 13B. I'd like to suggest that we lump it in all together because I think it falls under the same rubric of decorum. And so, having said that, I think it is completely. I don't think you would allow myself to refer to any faculty member, any member of the Senate in such a way, in such a manner. Like, really, we need to have rules that apply to all people, unless the Senate is suggesting that there is a two-tier system.
Gary?
Well, in terms of decorum, you have forgotten to mention that somebody should not talk at the same time as the other senators. So when you're asked to stop talking, in a reasonable way, you should let the other people talk as well. As was the core issue of the last Senate, that one senator did not let the other people talk. As a matter of fact, there's an item in the minutes. I have no idea what happened. I couldn't hear a single word last night. And I'm pretty sure this leads to it was chaos. So that's part of the decorum as well. And another part of the decorum is following the regulations of the Senate. And when you're expelled, you leave the Senate. And that's also part of the game, in my opinion.
Madame?
But just to respond to that, I think the important part, I think last Senate meeting was an extreme example. I'm not here to make any excuses for what happened last Senate meeting, but what I think is most important is that every Senate meeting I have spoken out when somebody has been rude to Senator Hickey and has made comments. And each time the chairperson has ignored my request to have decorum established at the Senate. So why is it always that when members of the Senate disrespect Senator Hickey, they're allowed to continue on and not expelled? I would suggest then I will raise the issue that when I do hear folks making, or members of the Senate making discriminatory comments towards Mr. Hickey, I will ask them then to have a vote to have them expelled, because that has happened time and time again the past 3 Senate meetings which I have attended.
Is there other discussion about that? You're not making a motion, are you, Madame?
I'm asking that we establish some sort of decorum, and that the chairperson is at least able to have a respectful body is what I'm asking for.
Mr. Chairman, the Senator is making a clear and strong and direct request to you to treat students fairly. And what you say is, are you making a motion? Mr. Chairman, it couldn't be clearer. Please take action. Do the right thing, and let's have a fair Senate where students are treated properly.
Linda?
I would like to just come back to a point. I thought it was going to be later on, so I'm a little bit confused between this point and the 13B in terms, because I think Senator Slater was talking about, treatment of other senators as well, not just students. And I don't know if this is the forum to discuss this or not, because
Well, it appears we're dealing with it all at the same time, so why don't we talk about 13B now too? Did you have something you wanted to say about that?